I don't know about you, but when I'm scrolling on my phone and reading articles, about every day I get a notification. I wonder if you get that same notification. The notification simply goes like this: your battery is now at 20%, you irresponsible human being. And it's encouraging me to plug my phone up. And I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to get up and plug my phone up. And so sometimes I'll let it go down to 10%, 5%. If I'm feeling wild that day, 2%. When it's down to 2%, I start having a conversation with my phone, which is kind of like, just let me finish this article, just let me finish this article, just let me finish this article. You serve me. And then finally, I have to plug it in because, if not, it's going to die. And, I think a lot about us, when my phone gets down to 2%, 1%, it still looks normal. It still lights up. It can still answer a call. But behind the screen, it's running out of power. As a pastor, here's what I see a lot. I see a lot of you walk in week after week, and you kind of look like your battery is on 10%, 5%, 2%, 1%. You look fine on the outside. You went to work this week. You took care of the kids. You smiled when I said, "How are you doing?" But inside, your battery is dead. And I get it. Here in about 2 weeks, I moved from being a doctoral student to a doctoral candidate. And just even the thought of starting that big project, it exhausts me. It stresses me out. I'll be honest, I'm very stressed out about this part. And here's the thing, I'm actually really excited too. I think a lot of times we have stuff that we're really excited, that we love, we really enjoy doing it, but we got so much stuff going on and so many good things that we actually just become really stressed out and overwhelmed all the time. Life can be overwhelming. And for some of us, it's not all good things. For some of it, you have a job that makes you miserable. Your marriage is rough. Your finances, you don't know how things are going to get paid. Your children. Some of you have been walking with someone who's been struggling for a long time, and that's hard too. And maybe nothing's falling apart in your life, but life has been heavy for so long. You're just exhausted emotionally, spiritually. Now, we know what to do, right? If you're tired physically, go to sleep for 12 hours. Wake up, eat some horrible food, go back to bed for a few more hours, and do that again for another day. Guess what? You're healed. If your body's tired, we can get you back in shape in 2 days, okay? Now, if your soul is tired, I don't care how much you sleep. If your soul is tired, you can sleep 12 hours and still be exhausted emotionally and spiritually. So how do we keep from running low, okay? How do we keep keeping on when we feel like we just don't have anything left? Well, the Apostle Paul, this is one guy who knew a lot about pressure. He knew a lot about stress. He was criticized all the time. He was rejected. He was beaten. And also, he carried the huge responsibility of the churches. He also had this ongoing illness. 3 different times he came to God and said, "God, you've given me all these responsibilities, but I have this illness. My life, my ministry would be so much more productive if you would just take away, if you would just heal me. That's legitimate." And God said, "No. My power, my grace is sufficient for you." And so Paul continued to suffer, even in the midst of all these things. And so we see Paul twice in 2 Corinthians say, "We do not lose heart." He's not speaking to somebody who has life easy. No. He's speaking to someone who's discovered that there's a strength that goes deeper than our circumstances. And that's what I hope you discover today too, that there's a strength inside of you that goes deeper than your circumstances. And Paul lets us know how we can discover that. Let's look at this text today together. He says this, now pay attention because we're going to talk about this part a lot today. "But we have this treasure in jars of clay." Okay? And he talks about this, that there's this treasure in jars of clay. And what does it do? It shows this all-surpassing power is from God, not from us. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. Now, I want to paraphrase this next part. And he says, this is why we do not lose heart. Even as our bodies grow weak from stress, from pain, from trials, from good things, from bad things. You know how we just get so broken sometimes and stressed out. He says, God renews us within each day. Our present troubles are temporary, but God is using them to prepare eternal glory. So we center our attention not on what is visible and temporary, but what is unseen and eternal. So from the immediate context of this passage, we want to know, all right, why is Paul writing this to the people of Corinthians? Now, Paul is writing to a church where a couple things are going on. They're starting to question his ministry, okay? I'll tell you why here in a moment. And they're also just starting to question his health. It's very fascinating. Paul looks like life has chewed him up and spit him out. He doesn't look good. Okay, you got to understand that Paul, his body has scars all over. He suffers a lot. He has these trials and these repeated hardships like one after another. And they think, all right, Paul, if you are the apostle that God has anointed, God has sent, if you truly represent our God and the power of God, why does your life look horrible? That's a great question, isn't it? If God is supposed to be with you, why does your life look miserable? That's a phenomenal question. Some are actually using this against him. Why? Because back then, and the same as it is today, there's a lot of people who believe that if you're going to be a leader, the main person, that you got to look powerful, polished, successful. You got to be impressive to other people. And Paul is saying, all right, yeah, I got scars, I got hardships. Yes, I don't look great. I look like I've been chewed up and spit out. He goes, but here's the thing. You're missing the point. You're looking at the container. And you're missing the power that is inside of this container. You're missing the point. See, his weakness did not disprove the power of God. No, actually, his weakness demonstrated the power of God in his life. Because when you look at his life, you look at his body, you look at what had happened to him, you would have to say, only God. Only God can do something through a guy like that. He looked like he had been chewed up and spit out. He had scars, he was beaten, he was stoned, shipwrecked 5 different times. 5 times. 39 lashes on his back. He didn't look like a polished platform speaker that the other leaders in the ancient world did. He looked like a guy who just survived a war. Paul looked like he was living on 1%. His body was depleted, it was battered, and you know what? His circumstances were always overwhelming. And Paul would let you know, hey, my treasure isn't my personality, it isn't my toughness, it isn't my ability to think positively about any situation. No, you need to know that my treasure is the gospel. It's the hope, it's the joy, it's the power of Jesus living inside of me. And this is why Paul could be worn down without giving up. Now, pay attention, church. Everybody look me in the eyes. Today's sermon is not about how to avoid a difficult life. Okay? That would not be true to Scripture. No, what I'm going to talk about today is how to walk through a difficult life without losing your faith, your peace, and your joy. And the first lesson, my surprise, is from Paul on how to keep on keeping on. He says, first of all, you need to stop trying to be the source of power in your own life. Stop trying to be the source of power in your own life. He says, we have this treasure in jars of clay. Now think about the first century. If you went into any home, you were going to see a jar of clay. Okay? This is where they're going to hold their seeds in. They were going to hold the rice, the wheat, This is where they kept the candy away from the kids. All right. But these are fragile. Matter of fact, they break pretty easily. It's pretty easy to damage these, you know. It doesn't take much to break a hole through them or a few holes through them or to crack them to the point where they don't seem like they could be used anymore. And so what would they do with them back then? Now, it's not like we think, because it seems like every time you and I see an old jar of clay with holes in it and cracks in it, it's in a museum. No, they did not put them in museums after they cracked them. They threw them away. They considered them useless. Paul says that you and I are like this jar of clay. The difficulties of this world, the trials of this world, the pain of this world, the loss that we experience in this world, the stress, the burdens, the pain, the humiliation, all of those things, it wears on us, and it starts to show the chink in our armor. It breaks us down, and we start to have these cracks in our life. And our bodies, as we get older, they break down. Can I get an amen? Amen. I used to always think, this one's free. I'm not going to charge you for this one. I used to always think that people who were retired were really lucky. And maybe that's because my life was overwhelming, going to school and all this other stuff when I was young and starting a family. And as I've matured and got to experience life a lot more, I realized that, let me tell you something. And it's something the younger people need to know. You need to grow your faith passionately, because the hardest years of your life are after you retire. You have a certain amount of money, and that's it for you to live the rest of your life on. You better have faith. Your body, it starts to do things that you don't understand. Okay, for instance, I'm not even that old. I'm like 47, which is like to a kid, that's ancient, but to you, not really. But I went to bed last night, and this shoulder hurt. I asked God, because it hurt all evening, and I was like, God, I'd love for my shoulder not to hurt. I woke up, and guess what? The shoulder didn't hurt. This shoulder was an extreme amount of pain. Like our bodies. And Paul says, yeah, you know what? You're paying attention to all this stuff, and you're wondering, like, man, how can God's power rest upon you? How could God's anointing rest upon you? How could God's blessing rest upon you? When we look at your life, and it looks tough, it looks miserable, it looks painful, and man, Paul, you look like you just came out of a war-torn country. You look rough, man. Paul says, you're looking at the wrong thing. You're looking at the container. You're missing the treasure that is inside of me. Now, what is that treasure that all of us carry who follow Christ? Well, first of all, it's Jesus within us. It's His grace that saves us. His hope that holds us. It's His power that sustains us. We might be fragile, but it's the power of God inside of us. Now, this human container, again, is fragile. My family learned this big time. Again, another reminder, last month I was preaching Father's Day. Andrew came to me in between services and said, hey, your dad, he has to go to the hospital. His legs aren't working. Sounded to me like he had a pinched nerve, or maybe he threw out his back. So I preached. We tried to get a hold of him after service. Couldn't get a hold of him. Figured, all right, they're in the ER getting things checked out. And then we finally got a hold of them, and it was my brother saying, like, you need to get over to Ohio now. Dad is paralyzed, and he has to go into surgery, and they've given us two options. He's either going to be paralyzed for the rest of his life, or he's going to die. We drive 2 hours over there. What happened was he had a hemorrhage, and they were saying it was on the inside of his spinal cord. And so I called some of the healthcare professionals that I know, and they said, yeah, that's pretty much the case. Yeah, that's what you have to look forward to. I'm sorry. And so for the next 8 hours, it was a prayer vigil at the Miami Valley Hospital. When they came out, they said, we actually got good news. See, they had cut through his bottom 4 or 5 vertebrae to relieve some of the pain. And here's what they found, that the hemorrhage was not inside the spinal cord, but on top of the spinal cord. And they never found the hemorrhage, but basically what that meant was that he could be, unparalyzed. And so over the next couple of days, guess what? Dad started to be able to walk again. And today, now it's been a little over a month, Dad's on a walker. He's slow, but he is moving a little bit. But I was reminded, and I want to remind you right now, you know what my dad was doing? He was getting ready for church. He stood up, and his body broke down like that. That's all. He just stood up. Guys, life is fragile. Our bodies can go like that. We're easily broken. And so we actually have some natural questions to ask today. Like, all right, if we contain this treasure, here we are, we're followers of Christ. If I contain this treasure that Paul speaks of inside of me, then why doesn't God heal our bodies immediately? Wouldn't that bring God incredible glory? Why does God allow us to go through some diseases? Wouldn't it bring God incredible glory if all the Christians never got sick? Paul, this seems like a contradiction. You say God has this treasure inside of us, but our bodies are breaking down. Why doesn't God prevent these things if his treasure is so precious? Why are we given fragile bodies? And Paul simply explains this. Here's what he goes to say. He says, but we have this treasure in jars of clay. What? To show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. Remember that song, those of you who went to Sunday school? We are weak, but he is strong. Yes, Jesus loves me. You remember that song? We were taught from a little age that we're weak, but he is strong. And Paul wants us to understand that in our weakness, in our struggles, in our pain, in our trials, in our broken down bodies, the power of the gospel is still alive. The hope of eternity is shown to others. And let me tell you something about my dad. My dad, quite a personality, by the way, big personality. Every person who came into his hospital room or rehab or came to his house to visit him, he has told them all about Jesus. He's like, Jesus healed me. I should be paralyzed. I should be dead. Jesus touched me. Jesus did this. Jesus did that. Even when I was at the hospital, I'm sitting there watching Dad tell each and every nurse that came in, Jesus Christ healed me. You wouldn't believe it. I should be paralyzed right now, but Jesus Christ healed me. And then he would look at me and start telling me about how awesome Jesus was. And I'm like, I know how awesome Jesus is. He goes, no, you don't understand Jesus like I understand Jesus. No, you understand, and we're sitting there. I'm like, no, I get it. He goes, no, I know Jesus. And so he couldn't shut up about it. Why? Because he had experienced the glory of God even in the midst. And here's somebody who couldn't even walk. His legs were still paralyzed, and he's telling everybody about Jesus and how awesome he is. Let me tell you something. God allows things to happen to us because it brings him great glory when we sing his praises in the midst of our pain. Now, church, I just want to shift for a moment here and listen to me. Stress, and here's one of the keys to being able to deal with your stress. Okay? You've got to make a decision that everything doesn't depend on you. There's some of you in this room, you're like, I got to hold my family together. I have to fix this problem. I got to keep everybody happy. I got to be the one who always knows what happens next. I have to be strong enough for everybody. Well, no wonder you're exhausted. You're doing God's job, not your job. And a lot of us, we're on the other end of the thing where we would just wish God would change all of our circumstances. God, remove the pressure. God, change this person. God, open this door. God, fix this by Friday. Let me tell you what the saint missionary Elizabeth Elliot said. She goes, the secret is Christ in me, not me in a different set of circumstances. Yeah, God can change your circumstances. But sometimes the first work is to demonstrate his power through you. Look at this. See, your weaknesses and trials are not proof that God has left you. It might be the very place where his power becomes clearest in your life. Notice Paul doesn't say the power becomes stronger with a great personality or a perfect schedule or a trouble-free life. No. The power to handle our difficulties comes from God. That's why you and I, we could go into that difficult meeting and say, God, give me the strength. When the medical news comes, we can say, God, steady me. When our child is hurting, and you know what this is like, when our child is hurt and we just can't fix it for them, God, help me to love on them. When our thoughts won't slow down, God, renew my thoughts. See, sometimes the most spiritual thing we can do is say, God, I can't handle this on my own. See, we have to drop the illusion that we can handle everything. And we got to hand it over to God. And that leads us to our next point. The second thing that Paul would tell us on how to keep on keeping on in tough times is be honest about the pressure. Be honest with others about what's going on. He continues to say, he goes, we are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. Now, these are four honest descriptions. That hard pressed, in the Greek, it gives us the image of a wine press that crushes the grapes. In other words, the pressure's real. It's painful. Perplexed, in the Greek, it's fascinating. It not only means I don't know why this happened, it also means I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if you have been there, but that's pretty miserable. I like to know at least one of them. Why did this happen? Or how to fix it. But I don't like it when I don't know why this happened and I don't know how to fix it. And Paul says this is part of our life sometimes. You know, as a pastor, I get asked this question all the time. Why did this happen? Why is this happening? What's going on? And I sometimes just wish that there would be like this ribbon that would just drop down to heaven. It would drop down from heaven and you would talk to me about your problems and I would go, well, let me tell you why this is happening to you. And let me give you the meaning behind this. And let me tell you why this is actually good for your life. And then I'd just tie up a little bow and go, here's your bow. Enjoy it. But when people ask me, why did I lose my job? I don't have a bow for you. Why did my mom leave my family when I was young? I don't have a bow for you. Why did this child die when it was young? I don't have a bow for that. Why do I have this terminal illness? I don't have a bow for that. Sometimes we don't have a bow where we can just, neatly wrap all of our trials up and say, well, this is why. So when Paul says he was perplexed, he's saying this is part of the Christian experience. Sometimes we don't know why, and we don't know how to fix it. But here's what I want you to know today. Faith doesn't mean that you always understand. It means that you still trust in God, even when you don't understand it. Paul says he was perplexed. Paul continues, says he was persecuted. In other words, sometimes people came against him, struck down. That gives the image of a fighter who's been knocked down, but he says, but not destroyed. And let me tell you something. This right here is one of the most helpful pictures of faith. I want to show you this. See, faith does not deny the first half of this sentence I'm going to give you. Faith holds on to the but not, okay? See, I am pressed, but not crushed. I am confused, but not hopeless. I have been hurt, but not abandoned. I got knocked down, okay, but not out. Now, as we look at this list, I don't know about you, but I would love to erase the first half of every single one of those sentences. But that's not life, okay? Our faith holds on to the but not. And here's the thing, I've been around the church for my whole life. And for some reason, mature Christians, or people have this image of mature Christians where they're just so polished that, I'm not afraid, I'm not angry, I'm not disappointed, I'm not lonely. I know what to do. But the Bible is filled with people who don't know what to do with their emotions at some point. They're not going to admit, I got it all. It's all good. Everything's perfect. No. Look at David. David said, how long, Lord, am I going to suffer? Jeremiah wept. We see Elijah. He got to the point where he says, I'm done. I've had enough of this. Even Jesus in the garden, what does he say? I am overwhelmed with sorrow. God's not intimidated by your honesty. But you need to understand, you can't surrender what you keep pretending is not there. So be specific. God, I'm afraid of this diagnosis. God, I'm carrying anger towards this person. God, I'm tired of waiting. God, I don't know how my family is going to pay for this. Be honest. The third way to keep on keeping on, according to Paul in 2 Corinthians, is you need to receive today's strength for today's trouble. Receive today's strength for today's trouble. What does he say? He says, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. Now here's what's going on. There's two realities in the Christian life that happen at the same time. One, outwardly life drains you, okay? Your body ages, your schedule fills up, problems wear on you, grief leaves a mark, okay? Get that. At the same time, inwardly, those of us who have the Holy Spirit, God is renewing us, okay? Sometimes we wake up and life is still tough. The diagnosis has not changed. The relationship is still difficult. The answer has not arrived. But here's what God does. Check this out. Check the timing. He renews us and gives us strength day by day. He might not give you all the strength you need for the next month, but he will give you the strength you need for today. Pastoring a church during a pandemic, wouldn't recommend it to anybody, okay? The whole world was Looney Tunes for a while, if you remember that, especially that first year. It was a tough year for a few reasons, but there was a COVID-19 pandemic, and then there was, trust me, a mental health pandemic. And it seemed like each and every day there was a new decision that had to be made that day. And here's some things we all experience. We all experience that new crazy opinion to listen to, that new complaint to respond to, a new theory to roll our eyes at, a new conspiracy that was floated out there, a new political debate. We all experience those things. The war is out. For me personally, on top of all that, leading a scattered church for 3 years, that wore on me. I remember one season, about a year and 3 or 4 months into the pandemic, I reached my point where I was not just physically tired, but I was emotionally and spiritually done. And on top of walking with the church this season, I'd also lost, up to that point, about 8 or 9 family members who were close. Felt like my whole family had just been wiped out. And so when I got to that bottom part, and I was thinking, I don't know if I'm going to pastor this church. And I was really contemplating, thinking I maybe should move on, and maybe they should let someone else come in who has renewed energy. And then come in and just really revive this church, because I think I'm done. Man, if it was not for Tim, Andrew, Nabil, Terry Horner, and Don Courtney, this one day in my life, God sent them to say the right thing at the right time that changed my attitude. Now, they didn't fix everything that day, but here's what would happen. God starts sending people. I would have people literally come to me and say, God told me that I am to come and take you out to lunch today and love on you. Andy, how many times did you love on me? You just took me out to lunch, fed me a bunch of sushi, said crazy things, and let me know how much you love me. But God kept sending people to me like that all the time. And I fell deeply in love with this congregation. And there was a season there where it felt like I was meeting a new family. And then the thing that really got me was just watching the faithfulness and the grit of this congregation. And I couldn't believe how during the midst of us being scattered, I fell so much more deeply in love with you. You know, God never gave me the strength for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But it seemed like every day when I was going to bottom out, he was there for me. My body was weak. I was tired. I was exhausted. But that treasure that's inside of me, that power of the gospel, it renewed me. And that same power is available to every single one of you. And one of the best ways that Paul tells us to keep our spirits up, to keep motivated, to allow the power of the gospel to run through our life is lean into gratitude. That's our last point today. If you want to keep on keeping on, you got to lean into gratitude. It's one of the best ways that God renews us. And he says this, all this is for your benefit, so that the grace that is reaching more and more people may cause thanksgiving to overflow to what? the glory of God. Gratitude doesn't mean that everything's good. Trust me on that. Corrie ten Boom and her sister Betsy, one of the most crazy stories you'll ever hear. They were thrown into one of the most miserable camps during the Holocaust, Ravensbrück. And these two sisters made a pact that they were going to praise God and thank God every single day. So they had a list of things but they would show gratitude to God for. And they did this for a while, but then Corrie ten Boom's sister Betsy said, let's start praising God for the fleas. Their barracks were infested with fleas. And Corrie said, that's my line. Not praising God for these fleas. No way. Well, her sister insisted, and they start praising God for the fleas. Here's what they found out subsequently. It was because of those fleas and that infestation that the guards left their barrack alone. And they were able to have Bible studies. They were able to worship Jesus. They were able to pray with each other. They were able to share the gospel because of the fleas. Now here's what, gratitude does not call evil things good, okay? I'm not talking about denial here. See, there's a difference between gratitude and denial. Denial says this is not hurt. Gratitude says this hurts. But hurt is not the only thing here. God is here too. Now, our kids are all going back to school. Our college kids are going back to school. So I felt like it would only be fair for me to give every single one of you an assignment this week, okay? I'm going to give all of you homework. It's for every single one of you. Okay, here's what it simply is. I want you, each day this week, either on your phone, text it to yourself, or on your notes, or in your diary, your devotional, whatever. Each day this week, I want you to write one thing down that you are thankful for. Maybe it was a meal, maybe it was a conversation, maybe it was a blessing from God, but I want you to start tracking what God has done and the goodness. And it will change your attitude in the midst of suffering, in the midst of stress. You know, I have a thankfulness list on my phone. Funny enough, I started this thankfulness list September 26, 2019. I have a running log of 7 years of answered prayers and things I am thankful for God for. I mean, I got stuff on here about staff members who came on staff. Every single one of my bucks is on here in great detail. And just every blessing. And let me tell you something. I take this list out and I update it a lot, but I often take it out when I'm having a tough week. And it doesn't take long for me to remember how awesome God is and how faithful He has been, and that today's trouble is just today's trouble. But overall, God, just like He's had my past, He has my future. And by the time, it takes a long time to get to the end of my list now. By the time I get to the end of that, I'm praising God. I'm worshiping God. I'm sitting at my desk saying, God, you are amazing. You are faithful. You know, if your phone is running down, you don't need a motivational speech. You got to plug it into the power source. And we as clay jars, often when our bodies break, chinks in our armor happen, and maybe we don't look too great. Maybe our life looks stressful. Maybe our life looks painful. Maybe our life just doesn't look like what someone would think a Christian's life would look like. Maybe you've been battered, but let me tell you something. Remind yourself this is just a container. All those things happen in your life. That's just part of this life. But here's what we are all called to do. We are called to allow God's glory to shine through our cracks, to shine through our pain, to shine through our hurt, to shine through all of the broken places in our life. So when you're hard pressed, let that glory shine through you. When you're persecuted, let that glory shine through you. When you get knocked down, let that glory shine through you. When you are perplexed, let that glory shine through you. Here's the thing. Yeah, you're going to have a beat up, bruised body. And let me tell you, some of you guys who are older, Us younger people, we're watching your life. And I am so proud of the older people in this church because let me tell you something. You bring glory and honor to God through your suffering. You are showing us the great power of God despite your circumstances. Let's take some time to pray now. In the midst of our stress and our heaviness and the trials of our life, why don't you go ahead and think about those things that are perplexing to you, those things that maybe in your life that are hard-pressed, those trials in your life, those stresses, and go ahead and hand them over to God this morning. Recommit them and ask God to help identify it, admit it, and then admit that you need His help. Take those to Him now. And now, let us close out by asking God for His glory and His treasure to shine through your wounds, your scars, the pain in your life, to shine through your diagnosis, to shine through your poverty, to shine through your pain. Ask the Lord for His glory to be seen in your life. Dedicate your trials, dedicate your stress to Him for His glory.